Let's jump right in. Welcome to this explainer where today we're unpacking one of the most wild and enduring mysteries of the 20th century. Picture this. It's November 24th, 1971. A man casually boards a commercial flight, executes an absolutely flawless hijacking, extorts a massive ransom, and then literally vanishes into the night sky, never to be seen again. Over half a century later, in this case, it's still wide open. So we're going to break down exactly how he pulled it off, the massive FBI investigation that followed, and the completely baffling clues he left behind.
To really grasp how this all went down, we need to put ourselves right there on Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305. A man traveling under the alias Dan Cooper buys a one-way ticket from Portland to Seattle, pays entirely in cash. No big deal, right? Well, shortly after takeoff, Cooper hands a little note to flight attendant Florence Schaffner. The message was as simple as it was terrifying. I have a bomb. And the craziest part? He was perfectly calm, collected, completely in control from minute one.
Part 1. A calm and chilling threat. Okay, let's dive into this, because to prove he wasn't just bluffing, Cooper opens his briefcase just enough for Schaffner to catch a glimpse of the wires and cylinders inside. That chilling reality gave him all the leverage he needed to dictate his terms.
And those terms centered around one incredibly bold number. He demanded exactly $200,000 in cash. Now, to put that into perspective for us today, adjusted for inflation, we're talking about a payout of over $1.5 million. This was definitely not some random stick-up. This was a high-stakes, meticulously calculated extortion plot designed for a life-changing payday.
His full list of demands was highly specific, honestly very tactical. He didn't just want the cash. He also demanded 4 parachutes and a fuel truck ready and waiting on the tarmac the second the plane touched down in Seattle. The airline and the FBI realized the immense danger to everyone on board, so they completely complied. And, true to his word, once they landed in Seattle, Cooper safely released all 36 passengers in exchange for the money and the parachutes.
Let's quickly trace the path of Flight 305 to see this rapid succession of events. They board in Portland, they land in Seattle for that incredibly tense ransom exchange, but the ordeal was far from over. With the passengers gone, Cooper ordered the pilots to take off again, keeping only the flight crew on board. He demanded they fly south, heading toward Mexico City. Just imagine it. The tension in that cockpit must have been absolutely suffocating as that heavy aircraft lifted back into the pitch-black sky with a hijacker, a live bomb, and $200,000 in cash.
Part 2. The unprecedented escape, because this hostage situation was about to turn into the most daring, calculated escape in aviation history.
Cooper's flight instructions were unbelievably methodical. Just look at these steps. First, he demands the plane maintain a very low altitude, just 10,000 feet. Second, keep the wing flaps lowered to drastically slow the plane's speed. And third, and this is absolutely crucial, he ordered them to deploy the rear staircase. See, this specific aircraft, a Boeing 727, was practically the only commercial jetliner equipped with a built-in rear air stair that could actually be lowered mid-flight. The guy knew exactly what plane he needed for this job.
And this brilliantly illustrates the absolute madness of his final move. You have the brutal reality of the jump, a 10,000-foot drop into a freezing rainstorm over the dense, remote forests of Washington state in the dead of night. Juxtaposed against that is Cooper's attire. He's wearing a standard business suit and a parachute. He straps the $200,000 to his body, walks down that open rear staircase into the pitch black, and plummets into the freezing storm. And he was never seen again.
Part 3. Decades of dead ends. Cooper's leap triggered an immediate, massive manhunt that quickly evolved into one of the longest cold cases ever.
The FBI officially launched an operation codenamed NORJAC, standing for Northwest Hijacking. This would become one of the most extensive investigations in the entire history of the Bureau, dragging on for over 45 years. Agents interviewed hundreds upon hundreds of suspects. And here's a fascinating piece of trivia for you. The media actually made a reporting error early on. They mistakenly called the suspect D.B. Cooper instead of his actual ticketed alias, Dan Cooper. The name D.B. Cooper spread like wildfire and stuck in the public memory forever. But despite the massive fame of that name, the man himself? A total ghost.
For almost a whole decade, investigators found absolutely nothing. Zero. But then, a massive breakthrough happened in 1980. An 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was just digging around along the sandy banks of the Columbia River when he stumbled upon a decaying bundle of cash partially buried in the sand. The FBI rushed in, analyzed the bills, and confirmed the serial numbers perfectly matched Cooper's ransom money.
But surprisingly, rather than solving the case, this astonishing discovery only deepened the mystery. Sure, the location kinda made sense, the money could have washed downriver over the years, but extensive searches of the entire area yielded no other trace of Cooper. No clothing, no parachute, and definitely no sign of the rest of the money.
So, without a body, the FBI had to rely on three main working theories. The first one, and probably the most highly considered, is that it was simply a fatal jump. When you factor in the extreme freezing temperatures, zero visibility, that incredibly rugged terrain, and the fact that he likely used a parachute completely unsuited for that specific kind of drop, investigators strongly suspect he just didn't survive it. The second theory, he did survive, landed safely, and lived out his days quietly under a new identity. And finally, there are the more elaborate theories suggesting he had deep military or intelligence connections that helped him pull the whole shebang off and disappear.
Part 4. An unsolved American mystery. So the crucial point is, after decades of chasing leads and digging through forests, the investigation eventually hit a wall.
Which brings us to the modern status of the case. In 2016, the FBI formally suspended the active investigation into Norjack. They basically cited the need to redirect their resources and manpower to other priorities. Over the decades, we've seen numerous suspects proposed by the public and investigators alike, including a lot of men with extensive military parachuting backgrounds. But no one was ever definitively confirmed. Even with all our modern science, DNA evidence collected from the case files failed to conclusively match any named suspect. So the case technically remains open and the evidence is carefully preserved. But the act of hunting? That's ceased.
Which leaves us with one final, absolutely maddening question. Where is the rest of the money? Half a century later, this remains the only unsolved commercial skyjacking in U.S. history. A man in a business suit jumped out of a plane with a literal fortune and vanished. And you know, it is entirely possible that somewhere out there, hidden deep within the dark, remote forests of southwestern Washington, the rest of that ransom is still sitting in the cold ground, just waiting to be found. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and keep questioning the mysteries out there.